Today what I've got for you is a top level, best of 3, round of 16 pro tier 1v1 series that was sent over by Barcast TV, who hosts the Bar Pro League tournament series every, oh gosh, I don't know exactly when, but I know it was played very recently. It was played this last Saturday in lieu of Bar Fight Night, or maybe it was in coordination with Bar Fight Night. Either way, this is a top tier series from some very high level contenders in the 1v1 scene that went head to head on a very strange map. So I was very curious to pick up this series. I was very grateful to Barcast for sending it on over to me. I think we're in for a little bit of a treat. So today, spawning as our red commander, spawning in Cortex Fire Truck Red, a commander that goes by the name of Stardom. Stardom, a name you've heard of if you've played some free-for-all. Very, very powerful free-for-all player, prominent in that scene. Apparently going to be playing some 1v1 too, and obviously accustomed to it at 45 open skill. Remember, these open skill values are independent of the 8v8 game mode, or even the small team game mode. 1v1 is its own whole thing, so if you're 45 open skill in the 1v1 ladder, you're definitely going to be up there with the pros. Stardom going to be showing us some good old-fashioned Cortex maneuvers. Spawning in the other corner, spawning as the blue commander, and also spawning as Cortex. Not uncommon to see Cortex versus Cortex in the 1v1 scene. For the longest time, they've been dominant across the board, basically. The power of the Grunt mixed with the Exploiter definitely makes Cortex a really, really powerful contender in the early game here, with a slightly different spawn, going for the greedy mechs right here, enabling pumping out more grunts earlier on. It's going to be a Lord Vader. Lord Vader going to be going ahead and going into some of that good old-fashioned grunt spam early on. The red commander instead opting to go for a slightly more economic-focused build. We're going to be pumping out a a Resbot, a Grave Robber, in order to reclaim some of those trees. Now, the other thing I did want to acknowledge first and foremost, before we get too far into this video, before the action really rips off in a lightning start here, for whatever reason, my audio software has completely quit on me. So we're doing this live, we're doing this raw. Hopefully the raw recording sounds all right. Not sure how it's going to come out in the end, but I hope you can bear with me here as I find some sort of solution. It looks like Adobe Audition does not want to work with me anymore, so apparently we'll be switching up our audio our audio platform here in the next coming couple of days. But anyways, all that aside, if you're wondering why maybe I sound a little bit different, shouldn't be crazy difference, but maybe a little bit of a difference here and there. That's the reason why. Anyways, Grunt's already across the field, taking a fabulous trade right here for Lord Vader. Obviously, the first Grunt of the game. Not going to be detrimental. Not going to write the history of the game. Certainly it could, but in this sort of 1v1 situation, it's not going to be the end-all, be-all. Sniping the metal extractor is quite nice, though, especially considering we didn't even lose a unit for it. Now one of those grunts headed across the map right here for the blue commander, but it's like Vader knows his opponent inside and out. Already going to be sending a force over in this direction to intercept that grunt. Just like that, flashed down by the light hand-mounted lasers on those grunts right there. Ooh, one of them sneaks into the base. Gonna try and go for a kill on that metal extractor there. Parks next to the mechs and does get it. Oh my goodness. Talk about setting a pace for the rest of this game. Vader already off to a ripping, roaring start right here. Popping 2 of those metal extractors, including the 2.5 right here. Oh, the name of our map, by the way, I forgot to introduce it. It's called Hide and Seek 2.2.3, apparently. 1v1 or 3v3. It's a very interesting map. It's got all these little hills that you can take cover behind. It's got a lot of these metal extractors that are golden, that are worth quite a bit more than the regular metal extractors that are just 1.4. Means that there's a lot of interesting places that you can take advantage of on this map. There are also geothermals in the backline right here, which means that you can go ahead and get some of that very efficient, very early geothermal power up and running. Obviously too costly for an early game 1v1, but once you've got a couple of those mexes up and running, once you've got a decent early game economy, yeah, it's not going to be the end of the world to go for one of those mexes with just a constructor or two. Speaking of constructors or two, one in the backline already in a little bit of trouble here. Lone constructor without an escort of grunts headed towards these 3 mexes in the backline. I think Vader is sniffing that out and deducing that there's a good odds that we're going to try and rush for these high octane metal extractors, considering the fact that already so much damage has been done with those grunts early on. And just like that, this constructor falls prey to the grunt in the backline here. Will manage to snipe the constructor, which hurts because, of course, it shuts down all the progression down here. We can always get a Resbot over to try and resurrect all this. Oh, but look at that cheeky play. The blue commander using the attack feature on units in Beyond No Reason. Someone brought this up in a comment. I thought it was a good idea. A lot of people are migrating from StarCraft. Well, not permanently anyways, but they're trying out Beyond No Reason from StarCraft, so they were confused to see units firing at the ground willy-nilly. I call it dumb firing. Basically, in this game, you can hit the A button, or whatever your attack button is, and force a unit to target a spot on the map. I'm sure Terrans with their long-range tanks there, gosh, what are they called? Siege tanks would probably love to have that sort of ability. Just set them up, raining fire on a position on the map. But anyways, what that means is that essentially they will just fire right there. But what we saw was the grunt killing the wreckage of the constructor so that we actually couldn't go ahead and build a... or we couldn't get a resbot over here to resurrect it. It's now just debris. Is this a transport? Oh, no, it's a it's an LLT. I thought it was a transport, signaling we might be on a air lab here. The pros are known for switching techs very, very quickly, getting their units in and out of combat and then pulling into different techs, right? Going for air units, going for shurikens, very popular in the Cortex meta, but obviously just going for any kind of tech that's going to give them an advantage. Vader expanding forward with the commander, doing guarded expansions, which I think makes a lot of sense. Since we're bots versus bots, you got to expect those raiding parties are going to be coming all the time. Just like this in the backline. One of them headed towards this backline right here. We do have an LLT to defend. I believe 4 grunts will beat an LLT if they're microed just about perfectly. LLT, though, does manage to latch onto those, and so it will start to blast them down. The grunts do manage to snipe the metal extractor, and they almost snipe the constructor, but it won't be. They're nicely defended right here by this blue constructor, and eventually all those metal extractors will be coming up here just as well. Now, a decent engagement on the front line. The red commander with plenty of grunts to engage right now. 15 grunts up against the defensive 7. There is an LLT here, and it's important not to undercount the LLT. It does contribute a lot of firepower in these early skirmishes. Hero grunt in the backline that has taken out the constructor is still lingering around, and it does find a couple of these resbots over here. I'd love to see those sniped away. Yep, red commander going to pull them back immediately. I don't think the blue commander really realized that it found those. I think Vader was too busy microing this engagement on the front lines here, trying to keep this all nice and safe. Constructor naked expanding on the right-hand side. These are less valuable metal extractors, so understandable to go for that. But also, since you know your opponent is moving their army around to your backline, it means there's good odds that you're going to be safe to expand in this direction. Wouldn't mind an exploiter maybe on these 2 metal extractors just to lock those down, but obviously every scrap of metal that you put into an exploiter, into any kind of static defense, is of course metal that could be units on the other side of the battlefield. Why does it feel like the music has been turned off today? We'll go ahead and skip through here. Hopefully we see that picking up slowly. I didn't adjust anything about the music, so... might just be a slow moment. Oh, a killer E-stall for the blue commander. Means the LLT is not firing. Means that the grunts are able to snipe the constructor in the backline right here and shut down any further expansion. An excellent engagement right now, though, from the blue commander's grunts moving in to flash down all of this army in red. And my goodness, showing you just how important that concave is. I think we lost like 2 or 3 grunts for the blue commander, all of the grunts for the red. Beautiful, beautiful trade right there. We've got a couple of thugs on the front line right now for Stardom, looking to get aggressive with some of those heavier bots. We do have an exploiter. Ooh, not quite up yet. 10 more seconds and this exploiter would have been up and running, and it would have been more than enough to defend this. But the grunts move in just in the nick of time. Talk about a beautiful read right here from Lord Vader. Sends the counterattack across the map, sensing that he needs to get some damage done, and does indeed find an opportunity to shut down an expansion path over here. Naked expanding on the metal extractors in the backline, I guess figuring that there's not going to be much more aggression back there after already having been sniped successfully. However, there are plenty of units eager to move around over here. Sniping metal extractors left, right, and center. So much damage from both of these commanders. You can see Lord Vader doing an excellent job of keeping the damage high, though. 11,000 damage overall versus 8.2k means that the blue commander has just been more aggressive across the map, been better about sending those assault parties to try and find value wherever they can. LLT coming up right here. 10 more seconds. Ah, so close. Looks like these grunts will get here just in the nick of time as this LLT comes up and running. We're going to go for an exploiter back here after the LLT finishes. I like that, going for a little bit of LLT coverage and then going for the exploiter. 4 grunts, we've already seen that's not enough to deal with the LLT, so they will turn around, but we do need to get this mechs up and running as quickly as possible. Oh, killer E-stall for the red commander. Oh, we just saw this on the other side of the map, getting some serious deja vu. Just like that, the red commander, yeah, the LLT wasn't firing for a while there, so the exploiter does go down. LLT will be enough to defend. Whoa, that was weird. Oh. I'm not sure if that flashed on your screen. For whatever reason, Adobe Creative Cloud decided to pop up. Professional Commentator 101. Thank you very much for bearing with me. I've been wrestling with Adobe all morning today. It's been a nightmare. YouTuber problems. Definitely YouTuber problems. Grunts moving around over here in the backlines. Yeah, nice little spread on those just to try and make sure that we're spreading the damage across as big a surface area as possible. Obviously, metal extractors, wind turbines. Oh, killer run-by path right here, though. Yeah, you know what? These grunts have found an opportunity to sneak into the back of all these wind turbines. They're going to be more than happy to flash those down. Just like that, wind turbines start falling, and once the wind turbines start popping, it makes them way easier for those grunts to pop down. Meanwhile, loads of grunts have also passed through over into this section of the map, meaning that the resbots get caught. This is a huge swell of damage right here for the Red Commander, bringing it back into the favor of the Red Commander as far as the damage goes. 8% damage in favor now for Stardom. Beautifully done right there from the Red Commander, making sure to take advantage of whatever opportunity paths are available. Despite the constant little aggression from the blue team, it only takes a little bit of the right pressure in the right place in order to crumble one of these front lines. Well, really one of the back lines, I guess I should say. Grunt right here did discover an unguarded metal extractor, but instead it'll sneak around for one of the ones that's guarded by an LLT. Not the end of the world, of course, because you can always pull that Grunt out of reserve and just go back and kill those, and indeed, it looks like Stardom will. Trying to make sure that this front line is sturdy enough to hold so that the commander can't get sniped, while also trying to make sure that reinforcements are constantly being pumped out of the lab right here. Going for mass constructor as opposed to any kind of build power, but I think it's about time we start putting down those construction turrets, if not maybe a couple of advanced solar panels. We could also go for the geothermal. I'm surprised we haven't seen either commander go for one of those yet. We're late enough into the game now that I feel like the geothermal would be well worth it. We also have enough metal extractors left over on the spots over here. Well, okay, it's actually just one. But either way, I'd still have to see a resbot going over there. I guess the resbots were mostly caught up in that engagement, though. Easier said than done, of course, too, and it's, hindsight, right, is 20/20, but spectator vision is 40/40. Well, that's not really how that works. But anyway, you get the idea. Hindsight is good and all, but spectators have perfect vision, so it's very easy for us to see the wide open lane that's available to harass the Red Commander. The desperately unguarded metal extractors along this path into the blue base. There's a lot of open opportunity paths that are available, but oftentimes really, really tricky to suss out when you're actually playing one of these games. Not to mention while you're trying to control multiple different armies. Stardom controlling a whopping 42 APM at the moment, with Lord Vader controlling 57. These commanders pouring their hearts into their keyboards right now. Maybe they've got foot pedals and everything too. 10 toes and 10 fingers means, yeah, about 10 APM per appendage. Sounds about right to me. Pretty sure that's how the pros play, right? Foot pedals and steering wheels. Thugs taking a wonderful engagement on this front line right here. Yeah, Vader should have been microing those units back a little bit sooner. Those Rocketeers didn't necessarily need to die right there. Didn't really take a very efficient trade, and the power of the Thug is overwhelming. How much can it do, though, against the grunts over here? At the very least, we have the reinforcements constantly being pumped out of the lab right here. You can see, oh, we've got a nice little patrol command over here as well. Lovely stuff. Yeah, grunts pushing through on the backline right here, but there is an LLT to defend. That's a lot of grunts, but I managed to blast down most of them. Oh, critical E-stall right there, though, does mean that the LLT will go down. The constructor, of course, will follow, therefore, afterwards. Another constructor waddling to its doom. Stardom not aware of the constructor falling in the backline right here. More focused on this frontline engagement with the thugs. We have the resbots to resurrect a lot of this. It's the reason why we're E-stalled so harshly right now as the Red Commander. Surprised that we're not going for a bigger economic investment right now. Yeah, we've got solar panels coming up and running, but I really think that geothermal is where we need to put our money. A couple of resbots eating trees, diverting them from the resurrection force on the front line and instead using them to eat up trees in order to pay for the geothermal would fix that E-stall issue. Apparently not worth it here, though. Much more important to get unit production, well, to keep unit production constantly moving. Lovely control right here from the Red Commander, taking in a numerically inferior force right here and using it to try and poke down specific units, right? Obviously, the ideal micro for this would be to use that set target command so that you can poke specific units down, right? Just shift queuing a bunch of the set targets so that you make sure that your forces are aligned on the same target all the time. Not always ideal, but oftentimes that's how you like to engage with unit compositions like this. Make sure that you take advantage of that snowballing effect. Grunts have found their opportunity path. They're now moving forward. They do find a couple of resbots here. At least one of them anyway. But more importantly, they find a whole bunch of metal extractors. Yeah, Grunt's going to be more than happy to walk this line right here and blast down as many of these mexes as possible. Vader on the front line, continuing to fight with that commander. Both commanders, actually, instilling a fighting spirit in their thugs. Those light plasma bots, they're quite menacing, but also they fall pretty easily. Yeah. We're definitely well into the snowballing numbers right here. You can see the blue commander waddling forward. Actually waddling a little too far forward. Goes for a D-gun right there, but gets jumped upon, and just like that, Stardom manages to claim game number 1 in this best of 3 series. Nicely done with just an overwhelming number of grunts. Despite the aggression in the early game, all it took was one good run by on the back line to swing this game back towards the Red Commander's favor. Let's go ahead and march into game number 2. Start on with a point on the board, looking to close out this best of 3 series by winning today's second map, Hades Pawns. Hades Pawns is an 8 versus 8 map, so insane to see these 1v1 commanders going to be playing on it. Means that we should be ripping and roaring for a high-octane match. Maybe we'll even get up to T2 with how much metal is actually available on this map. You can see metal extractors just about everywhere. Whosoever manages to claim more of those metal extractors obviously going to have a tremendous advantage, and of course going to be able to express their dominance across the battlefield here. Hades Pond also, like the last map, has loads of energy to reclaim here in the form of these Duracell crystals. This is what Duracell batteries are made out of, in case you were curious. They cram those batteries full of as many of these crystals as possible. These are the AAAs. I believe the green ones are AAs. I think the cyan ones are D batteries, but I could be wrong. And I'm pretty sure there's, well, rarer to see, but there are pink batteries as well. They use those to make the small coin batteries. Lord Vader here going to be going into a couple of vehicles right here as a Cortex commander, of course. While on the other side of the map, it looks like Stardom is very content to play some more of those vehicles. Pardon me, some more of those bots. Bots make a lot of sense in a lot of ways on this map. Of course, you have the mobility to get around the map a lot quicker. Those constructors are a little bit cheaper. You have the res bots to reclaim everything, and it's all together a much more faster-paced style of gameplay, right? You can build the incisors and you can send them around the map, but ultimately, when I think of speed, when I think of mobility, I think I lean towards the bots. Having more forces out on the field, especially on a map like this where you need to contest large swaths of the map, and there's also a lot of areas where you might be able to poke through defenses. Yeah, I think going for bots is going to lend a lot of flexibility here to Stardom. Obviously, of course, the vehicles have their merits too. The high health values, the just general high health value here, the Brute, 1970 HP. The Incisor having 820 versus, say, for instance, if we look at a Thug with a whopping 1100 HP. No matter how you slice it, you're going to have a sturdier army. Is that necessarily what you need, though? At the end of the day, killing the enemy's economy is the best way to win a game of Beyond All Reason. Well, I suppose killing their commander is the best way to win a game of Beyond All Reason, but certainly sniping the economy makes it quite a bit easier to do so. The one thing that I will say in favor of the amphibious vehicles, or favor of the vehicles, rather, spoiling it a little bit, spoiling the great reveal right there, is of course the amphibious tanks. Those Garpike, the amphibious T1 submersible tank for the Cortex faction, able to, of course, dive underneath the water here and pop up in locations that otherwise might be a little bit difficult for Stardom to predict. It's definitely an interesting option, not one that we often see as a game winner, but certainly one that you can use to catch your opponent by surprise. They're such an expensive investment for a unit that ultimately doesn't hold its weight as far as value per metal goes. It doesn't do a lot of damage, it doesn't have the most HP, you really pay a steep price for the ability to dive underwater. But if you can manage to snipe a metal extractor or a couple of wind turbines or something to that effect, sometimes it can be worth it. Mex is sniped right there, but the Rover does go down, or the Rascal, pardon me. Sniping that metal extractor, obviously a value win right here for the blue commander. You can see 203% damage value, very nicely done. But obviously that number is going to skew heavily back into evenness here, as these are just only the very first units in the game. Yeah, throwing Rascals away, I mean, it's a little bit sloppy. It's a little bit sloppy. It feels like Vader is kind of shaken after that first game, right? A little bit, you can see the adrenaline is spreading the APM a little thin right here as Lord Vader sends some of those scout units around where otherwise I feel like maybe they would have been better preserved for later trying to poke through the defenses here. But this is what I'm talking about. You already have grunts moving across the field right here for Stardom. 46 open skill. It's exactly what I'd like to see. Going to be going ahead and trying to contest a whole bunch of these. So we have 3 constructors moving in 3 different directions. I think that's probably just about perfect. Going to be building these metal extractors left, right, and center. Building LLTs to try and guard them as well, which is always nice. And, of course, you can always use these to build a little economy in the backline as well. Cortex not known for their for their wind technology, but obviously setting one of these to build wind turbines in the backline, not always the worst idea for just continually scaling the economy, even if the wind speed has been at 2 for, yeah, the majority of this game right now. Both commanders reeling from the energy deficit as these wind turbines are just garbage. Yeah, they've really been terrible this entire game. That's another thing I'd love to see. I mean, it's another bar to add or whatever, but the wind value, right? The average wind value, how it's actually been this game. Big incisor push over here. This is nothing to laugh at. This is 826, 802.6. That's what I was about to say. Boy. Getting worn thin here, eh? The incisor ball moving forward. 7 incisor, definitely enough to contend with a sizable grunt force. Certainly going to be pushing that defensive effect all the way to its limit. Grunts rallying over here on the left-hand side. We have 7 grunts versus 7 incisors. If we take a decent enough fight, it can work out in favor of the grunts. But obviously, it needs to be a killer fight, and this is just too sloppy. Just like that, the incisors managed to blast down metal extractors, constructors, and grunts all at once. Incisors received a significant buff recently. Subjective, air quotes recently, right? It was about 4 months ago, I want to say. It was significant a buff that I think it's worth mentioning again, but they essentially received the ability to shoot through each other. For the longest time, they weren't able to. They would have weird collision issues. Nowadays, incisors are more than capable of blasting past their brethren, meaning that they're quite a bit more effective when they ball up than they once were. Means that they're very, very effective as a siege force, and also they can sort of protect themselves by surrounding themselves in their brethren, and then of course when they die, it kind of creates a protective layer of metal and steel lying in ruin on the battlefield. Grunts continuing to move around in all sorts of directions, though. Stardom looking for a little bit of a counterattack on the southern side. Does manage to sneak one of the grunts directly through into the main base over here. Going to be trying to outrun the commander. It will be blasted down, though. These ones find the LLT and eventually manage to find an open, exposed metal extractor. The ones on the southern side retreat, and all said and done, this will be cleaned up nicely. Now, we do have plenty of constructors to go replace the ones that died, well, the one that died in the backline over here, but losing the metal extractors definitely hurts. Cuts into the metal production right now for the blue commander, meaning that for the time being, Vader is ahead in the metal value. 40% for right now is quite significant. 21 metal versus 15. Doesn't seem like the biggest of numbers, but of course you have to remember that every second that you have an advantage of metal, it's extra units that you can put out on the field, right? And sometimes it only takes a couple of extra units in order to really scale that snowball into something dangerous. And Sizer right here getting a little too close to the sun, flies into range of those LLTs, and that will mean that it does get blasted down right here. Its Incisor Accomplice will also be shut down right here, and this is the advantage that we're looking for. The Red Commander sending a couple of these Red Spots around to go pick up a whole bunch of the units, trying to resurrect that army and get it back into spec. I love this kind of thing. It's what makes bots powerful, is their ability to resurrect things. Here we go. The Constructor also resurrected right here. No such micro like we saw in the first game here to blast this down to debris. Does mean that this Constructor will now come back up and online, and there you go. You can see queuing up the mexes and then a whole bunch of wind turbines. It's a very common queue. Very, very easy to queue up those wind turbines without really too much concern for whether or not they'll be efficient. You know that they'll be more than efficient enough that you can bother to go for them. Especially on maps like this. Certain maps it's not true, but on maps like this it's going to be more than enough. FFS, cries out the blue commander, apparently unsatisfied with the build power coming up in the main base. We've got a construction turret slowly but surely working its way upwards. There we go, finally comes up and running. Means that it's time to start scaling the build power even further, apparently, yeah. With overwhelming power comes overwhelming build power for the blue commander. Vader more than eager to expand that operation, continuing to push forward with some more of these vehicles. Playing without warm-up is bad. Apparently, Bar Pro League, you can chat. I know some tournaments you're not allowed to chat to your opponent, but apparently these two having a nice little banter right now as these units continue to scale the economies and the build power. Solar panels coming up and running, and a lot of that build power coming up and running too. Oh, an interesting transition right here from the Red Commander. Decides to go into an air lab here, and I'm curious to see whether it's going to be Shuriken or Bombers. Looks like Shuriken is going to be the move right now. 58 metal and 1300 energy. Quite energy expensive for the early game, but certainly they can find their value easily. Paralyzing all these Incisor, for instance, and managing to blast them down with a efficient trade from a bot army. Kind of a mixed army here, actually. We got bots and vehicles working together in collaboration. Yeah, the difference is already made up right now. You can see the speed of the expansions is so much greater for the bot commander. Able to recover from the slight bit of damage that the vehicle commander did early on. More than slight, really. I mean, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 metal extractors at least, as well as a whole bunch of wind turbines were all blasted down. Not bad. Not bad whatsoever. First of the Shuriken are now produced right now, and they're going to be heading out onto the front lines. Trying to get those Shuriken into position is sometimes difficult, but as long as you manage to get enough of them up and running that they can snowball against the enemy force, all is going to be well and good. Interesting spawn locations from these commanders, too. Both of them choosing to spawn on the northern side, despite this map being mirrored essentially diagonally, right? So this north spawn, the equivalent spawn, would be down on the southern side, but apparently Vador not really caring so much about that, and more so focused on trying to deal with this massive red army on his front line. 1,800 metal worth of army right here, going up against 2,500, so if this army's all in position, Vador should easily take the win here. The real key to this army success, though, is going to be these riot tanks. The pounder tanks are so crucial for defending certain choke points. Their impulse more than enough to shut down those light tanks should they be rolling in big clusters like the army is right now for Vador. But if they're out of position, and oftentimes they are, then they won't find very much value whatsoever. Wouldn't mind seeing these bad boys just parked at choke points, right? Essentially just a static defense. Here come the shuriken. Yeah, we've got a multi-pronged kind of attack right now. Did we spy the shuriken right there? I'm not sure. I don't think we did. The trigger is pulled for the red commander. Start on marching the forces forward right now. Going to be sending the grunts into the front line of the blue commander, looking to get a little bit of damage. Are we going to commit to this fight? Yeah, I don't think we want to fight this army head on. There we go. Shuriken finally pulled. Get that riot tank. Every time those riot tanks fire is going to hurt, but there we go. Shuriken, paralytic, EMP, Bladewing drones do manage to shut down all of these riot tanks, meaning that the army is going to take a fabulous trade against them. Wonderful play right here from the red commander, surprising the blue commander with a little bit of shuriken play. Never a bad idea for a Cortex commander. Paralyzing those static defenses, of course, as well, also makes for an efficient trade right there, as those grunts now get to engage against an army that is essentially turned off. What once was a 2,500 metal now reduced quite significantly. Anti-air is pumped out, though, in the form of those missile trucks that eventually clear the airspace above the blue army. But taking out all those vehicles is going to be more than sufficient of a trade right now for the red commander. EMP drones, again, shutting down the exploiters. Things that normally would be a tremendous issue for the bot army, now accompanied by the shurikens, turned into quite an efficient trade. Very nicely done. Doing more with less right here. The red commander doing a fabulous job of making sure to keep the aggression high. Yeah, damage done 37k versus 21k means that the red commander Stardom here is having a wonderful time. Curious that we're not expanding southward anymore. Apparently we've cut the line off right here, and apparently we're just going to start building solar panels. Interesting to see. I would have expected that we just continue building these exploiters all over the place. Pretty much can stand on their own if you just build the exploiters. Makes for a very efficient trade if you just go ahead and build about 1.5 million exploiters all over the map. At some point, they're going to be able to pay themselves back. Vehicle lab in main base, vehicle lab on the front lines, air lab in main base, and also a bot lab. We've got 4 avenues of production, 3 different tech paths, all of which aimed at sending units towards this facility over here. Grunt spied that this LLT is just moments away from finishing. Nice little attempt at the self-destruct micro right there, but unfortunately the mech does die before it can pop. Grunt's now getting an opportunity to blast out a constructor. It's annoying. It's a little annoyance, but it does mean that this side is going to need another constructor. Bombers, meanwhile, have been sent around the map and are now going to connect in a massive carpet bombing run directly into the main base of the blue commander. Beautiful bombing runs right there. Take out a whole load of wind turbines, and it looks like they're not quite done yet. Doubling back around to try and pop as many more of these wind turbines as possible. Going to be deploying those light impulse warheads directly to the main power generation here for the blue commander. Right when energy speed was at its highest, too. 14 energy right now, 14 wind speed right now, means that those bombers took out a huge chunk of the blue economy. Energy per second now a 74% advantage for the red commander. Those bombers certainly finding their value here. The main army for the blue commander is looking menacing, though. We might be hoping to just stomp our way across the map. That might be the strategy here. We built up a sturdy enough army. We're just going to parade push through the middle of the map and try and get an efficient enough trade that it doesn't matter that the main base has been ravaged. Obviously, at the end of the day, if your base is destroyed, but you manage to have enough forces to kill the enemy commander, then it really doesn't matter. Exploiters falling left, right, and center with the core of riot tanks here as well. This is going to be fairly protected from any sort of spam attack. And it looks like we're headed for a good old-fashioned medium tank clash. Assault forces should be coming around the outside of the map at this point, trying to harass around the different angles, trying not to take a head-on fight with these medium tanks. Bombers continuing to blast down metal extractors over here, certainly finding value in the many kills that they've gotten on the metal extractors, but continuing to also assault the main base. Riot tank pushing forward to try and assault over on the right-hand side. but the main death ball is moving forward. What are we going to do to shut down all these medium tanks? One option is, of course, to go for those riot tanks. We could pump out those tanks, the pounders, and it looks like we will. Shurikens have also been saved up here, trying to get them into position so that we can use them, but with the anti-air included in this mixture here, we have 3 of those Lasher. It's going to take quite a lot before those Shuriken are actually properly dealt with. What can you do against this many pounder, though? There are red forces moving into the base over here. It's all about how well we can multitask these 2 different armies clashing right now. Shuriken getting blasted down by the anti-air. The trigger is pulled at this point. Grunt's now sprinting forward into the fire of the riot tanks. You know what? Causing a lot of friendly fire damage, though. Oh, riot tanks shooting their own buddies in the face. Blasting down more of the blue tanks than I think they managed to blast down the red ones. And just like that, wow, what an impossible task the blue commander was faced with. Trying to clean up a massive army of vehicles right on his front door, and with that spectacular grunt pull, managed to actually blast down all those really, really tanky units. Meanwhile, orchestrating a beautiful counterattack in the main base, the resbots go down. Now the actual laboratory itself is in trouble. Wow, what a play. Always blown away by these pro-level players and the decision-making that they can make. That army clash was so well coordinated, so perfectly orchestrated, nearly impossible to gauge whether that army is going to work out or not. And it looks like Stardom will take this series 2-0 against his opponent right here. Lord Vader with the clean, or Stardom rather, with the clean sweep against Lord Vader. My goodness. Sniping the economy while also micromanaging a massive army in the backline right here. Hold on, let me just close this out and take a look at this right here. 4,000 metal worth of tanks right on the front line, and manages to micro all of it to safety. What a beautiful match. What a beautiful series between these 2 pros. Thanks a ton for watching. I sure hope you enjoyed. Always feel free to leave a like or subscribe down below if you'd like to join the Brightworks. We do post commentaries every single day here at the Beyond All Reason Brightworks, and I'm more than happy to have you here. Hope you have a fabulous rest of your day, though, and I hope you enjoyed. And I hope to see you in the very next game of Beyond All Reason. Peace out, everybody.